Super. So I think we have stabilized. So let's not waste any more time in here and let's kickstart this session today. So last webinar of the year. This one is a treat. I'm really looking forward to it. It's turning the table, so to speak. I've been on Matthew's podcast and YouTube series before. I've had a number of conversations. Always great. Always really stimulating. I don't want to butcher the introduction, but I'll say that Matthew Niederberger from Holland, Netherlands, is a consultant in the space of MarTech. Has a big experience with everything CDP, tech management, something really, really deep history with this technology, and also is an author of MarTech Therapy, a blog and newsletter. I one of the few things I subscribe to, and I really, really enjoy it. Matthew also helps companies with the MarTech strategy execution, stack architecture, and that's sort of why we've invited him here today to the session. So we can ask him questions and hear his best tips and approaches to what does it mean picking CDP, but kind of going a little bit beyond that, beyond what does it, what are the criteria that you should have, but like also when are companies ready, when is it a good choice, when is CDP not appropriate, and everything kind of in this realm. We'll run usual format. Matthew has a couple of slides, so we'll run us through, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I've got a bunch of questions already, and we'll take questions from the audience as well. So everyone, if you have a question, chat or the Q&A function will do. I'll pick them up and we will get started. So Matthew, over to you, and let's kickstart this.
Yeah, thank you, Pavel. That's quite an introduction. And my name is Matthew. Groeten uit Nederland. Greetings from the Netherlands. I live in a small place called Delft. Just a little bit of background. I've been in digital data for about 22 years. I've pretty seen every corner of the room so far, from analytics, quantitative to qualitative data. I've sat down with users, done user research, worked with feedback forms. Data quality has always been a kind of a red line through the history of my life. Poor in most cases, that to the point that I even got technical, where I wanted to understand how to improve implementations. And then lo and behold, customer data platforms entered the realm. For most companies, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it really started from a kind of a data hub, passing on data from one source to another, usually from web or server to server, because web to server wasn't really the challenge, but server to server offered a whole lot of new opportunities in collecting and making use of that data. And then they thought, well, why don't we start stitching it to profiles? And a lot has changed. 2026, in my opinion, is definitely going to be a year that, again, this is my personal opinion from what I've seen with the clients that I've worked with this year. It's going to be a little bit less might be a little bit less about the technology, but also, but more about looking at the people who need to work with it. So let's jump right in. Just a few slides. Again, if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A, and then Pavel and I will tackle them right after these slides. All right. So over the past few weeks, I've written a few articles about how to prepare yourself to choose a CDP, from negotiations, from learning how to talk the talk, what is actually meant. But I also took a little bit a quick brief look at the market situation and came up with a few slides. Now, for those of you who've had their cup of coffee this morning, AI is definitely part of that process in 2026, especially if you watched or downloaded the State of MarTech 2026 report already. AI is not going away, and we are seeing this in a lot of the tools and the releases that are coming out. And if you look closely at these slides, they've been produced by Notebook LM. Wonderful solution, but it's just kind of a good way to visualize the stories that I've been telling on my blog. So for 2026, we're actually going to, in my opinion, going to see a growth in the market for CDPs and CEPs. It's definitely been a crowded market so far. And if you remember correctly, at the end of last of 2024, we started seeing a lot of these consolidations taking place within the CDP market. There was a lot of I don't want to say hysteria, but a lot of consolidation of features within the CDP tools, causing interest on one side, maybe a flooded market on the other side. So in the past few months, we've seen some stabilization with these acquisitions. But on the other end, we are seeing that this can benefit the buyers, especially in 2026. And it's a trend that I've seen in 2025, and I hope for you, those of you listening, that it will push through into 2026. The shift that we will see, or that I predict that we will see, is that mid-market, so small enterprise and lower, will actually be picking up a lot more traction in terms of sales than the enterprise. A lot of companies have been focusing on selling their products and services to enterprise companies, but I think in 2026 that the small enterprise and mid-market, it's their turn. They're slowly maturing. They've gotten used to marketing automation over the past 5 to 8 years, and if they're lucky enough, they've done business well enough, you'll definitely see that they are now becoming more interested in doing more with their data. Customer data platforms is definitely a way to go for them. So the question, as I mentioned before, is it's going to be a little bit more about the human side of it. And with the human side, I also mean from an HR perspective. So there are various routes you can go with a CDP. We've all heard the terms. We've all seen the bashing on LinkedIn. Is it traditional? Is it composable? Is it hybrid? And in the end, it's not about the tools. The tools work. And they've always kept working. And sure, you might have your favorite brand or your favorite vendor, I should say, or your favorite way of working. But it comes down that you need to look inside into your company and say, okay, what level of complexity do we want to own within the organization? Do we want a solution that helps us achieve our goal with minimal effort on our end to maintain it? Or do we want to go down, as they would usually say, with composable into a more technical aspect? We need to maintain the servers, we need to maintain the pipelines, et cetera. So it really depends on the maturity of your company and the amount of resources. So that's definitely going to be a strong point of contention in 2026 when looking into a new CDP. I also mentioned at the beginning something about, talk the talk. Now, what I mean with talk the talk is when you're doing negotiation with these companies, you'll hear terms like monthly active users, monthly tracked users. What's an event? What's what is considered a profile? These are things that during the process of actually going into a kind of a negotiation phase are things you need to make clear, because a monthly tracked user is different than a monthly active user. It's different than how do anonymous profiles get counted within the system? And lo and behold, when you start opening up this little can of worms, you'll start seeing the big differences between the different vendors with CDPs. So learning how to talk the talk, especially if you're kind of in the middle, are you looking for a CDP or a CEP? The languages are completely different. So make sure to dive a little bit into that before you start talking to these vendors, because it'll really blindside them if you know how to talk the talk. So you can kind of circumvent the marketing speak. No offense to Palp, you guys do great work. Also, events. When you start doing calculations for how much you want to pay for a CDP or CEP, there are a lot of factors that you need to take into account. And one of them is overages. Nobody likes overages. And unfortunately, they're in most cases a fact of life. It could be a good sign. It could be a sign that your business is doing really well. You're outperforming your initial estimated amount of events or profiles that you needed when you close that contract. So in terms of paying overages is not necessarily a problem, because your business is doing well and hopefully you're getting more revenue to pay for those overages costs. It could also be a sign of a poor implementation. Do you really need all those events? Do you really need all those anonymous profiles in your CDP or CEP that are actually just raking up costs and yeah, well, increasing the bill that you're going to get at the end of the year to pay for those overages. So there's a lot of consideration that you need to take with you into 2026, especially if you as these systems get smarter. Uh, Many of them no code AIs being pushed into these solutions to build out audiences, to build out journeys, uh, causing more contact moments, generating more events, more profiles. This is something that you need to take into account as well in 2026. So we briefly spoke about composable, and I really want to keep this short because there are a lot of different arguments about this that you currently see in the market. But composable in a lot of cases depends on maturity. So when you look at, is your company ready for that level of complexity? If you are, there are a few other things that you need to keep in mind. There are things like what I call the operational costs. You need to pay for your infrastructure. This is something that usually when you go for a traditional CDP is included in that pricing. Same with processes. And by the way, it's very difficult to get solid data on this because nobody's exposing, especially companies and vendors. They're not talking about pricing. So again, this is based on research that I have been able to find, but again, it's very minimal. But it's a little bit more of logic thinking than actual facts at this stage, because if you build something yourself, a composable solution, there are factors that you need to take into account. Processes is a big thing, especially around AI these days. When you go down a traditional route, the traditional license fee usually includes everything from processing, especially when it comes down to real time. That's why those are huge prices if you want to do that in a composable architecture. Yes, the prices are coming down, but again, it's a factor that you shouldn't overlook too quickly. And then also with AI, the more Gen AI you want to do within your system, the journey building, the audience building, maybe you want to create copy for the emails or push notifications that are going out, or image generation based on a product portfolio or product feed that you have accessible to the CDP. Again, definitely some considerations to keep. Now, take this slide a little bit with a grain of salt. Like I said, the amount of data is very limited. But when you are considering purchasing a CDP in 2026, there's something that you need to consider. It's called total cost of ownership, TCO. TCO boils down to everything we've just covered. How much do your people cost who are running it? I've seen organizations with junior marketing team, relatively low cost, invest into a little bit above average CDP or CEP that makes it easy for them to work with. A lot of junior marketeers, no offense if you're on the line, SQL is a little bit of a mystery, just to give an example. So how do you translate SQL into building out those audiences within the CDP and the CEP? Well, with a lot of these new no-code approaches, drag and drop connectors to downstream destinations, everything gets a whole lot easier. So it's easier to build up a strong marketing team, even with junior marketeers, as long as the application allows for it. If you have a composable stack, again, you might have lower upfront costs because you can scale at the speed that you want. You have control over those costs for process, for hosting, and for license fee for the number of connections, but you will require more human costs. So you might need data engineers alongside those marketeers to be able to make strong use of a solution like that. So that's definitely something that when in 2026, as we look at the speed at how this technology is advancing, it's insane, but it's making life so much easier. So I don't really want to make the case for no code, kind of easy out of the box solutions or composable. I think there's going to be a way in the middle, because there are companies out there who have been operating with a cloud data warehouse for years, and there are some that are just starting up who might have still running everything on a CRM with no historical context, sending out emails and seeing poor returns. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities out there, but that comes back again to less mature companies than enterprise. So to hammer that, put that final nail in the coffin around human resources, it's about bandwidth. So the more the tool can do, the smaller the team can be, because the tool will leverage or actually pick up the weight and the burden of making everything happen. If you have a small team, but there's a lot that needs to be configured and maintained, it's going to be a difficult process to really grow. You're going to be limited by the size and the skills of the team that you have working with the solution. So the core message that I want to give with you around CDPs for 2026 is don't worry about price. Like I said, what I've seen so far, it's the market is leaning more towards the buyers right now. There are a lot of vendors out there. You need to look at what your company is able to handle. How does it fit into your existing architecture? How does it fit, or how well will it be adopted by the teams that you have in your company? And once you start looking from that angle, I think you'll be in a much better position to make a decision about how you want to move forward with a CDP in 2026. So that's, again, a little bit my spiel. And as Pavel said at the beginning, I'm just going to plug myself here. The work that I do is help companies actually manage this process. How do we start looking at what they have? How do we start looking at the people, listening to the people, what they need, and finding a strong match for them moving forward? And again, don't underestimate yourself. CDPs, CEPs, it's difficult work. If you've got the basics down right, I mean, you've already done a great achievement. It does get difficult, but as long as you're getting the foundation right, you're definitely on your way to some form of success, definitely individually. So yeah, that's kind of my sales pitch here for today. But I'm dying to get into some of these questions, Pavel.
Thank you so much for this. This opens up so many doors, and I would again encourage everyone to pop the questions in the chat. I will start with one from there. So, how would you evaluate the ability of companies to issue RFP that relevantly covers their business needs and requirements for CDP power users? So basically, how good are companies doing RFPs and asking for a friend from in this perspective, because we do deal with those a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, and maybe if you could just, when you answer that, also maybe dive a little bit into what's the level of maturity that you see, because this is exactly the kind of work that you're doing with
Yeah.
clients. So how ready are they when someone sells them on the idea of buying a CDP, or
Yeah.
convinces them it's a good idea?
No, absolutely. So around the RFP question, so there's actually, let's start with the RFP question and then kind of get into the maturity one. The RFP question it's a shady one at the moment, because as much as I approve of an RFP process, and I actually do facilitate those, it's what I've been seeing a lot now is, and again, I don't know if you've ever heard the term of there's an app for that. There are apps out there today using AI to respond to RFPs. So as soon that kind of dehumanizes the entire process, because when you create an RFP, you are in effect doing, I mean, if you do it right, you do your stakeholder interviews internally, you do the architecture review, you try to find where the gaps are between the state that you're in now and the state where you want to be. And you write out this beautiful RFP. You list out all your questions and your concerns, your current situation, but you get almost an automated canned response back. So when it comes down to RFPs, keep it human. Make sure to be critical about the responses that you get back, because again, if anyone has worked with AI, it's all about context, and you'll quickly notice in the responses if the replies are kind of AI generated, because it will miss the context around your business. And if a vendor does it well, they will know your company, they will know your business, they will have taken their insights from discussions with you previously and put that into their RFP response. So that's definitely something that I want to give them. And again, I've just to kind of continue on from the RFP to the demos, changes in demos that I've seen lately. And one thing that has fascinated me, and again, this comes back to AI, is how some vendors are actually leveraging AI to improve the quality of their demos. I've seen demo websites being built, fully I want to say one-on-one copies, but near copies. I've seen entire data models being generated, used to generate mock data into a CDP for a proof of concept period. So when these marketeers go into these systems to actually train or kind of trial the systems, they're working with near accurate data that they would work with in a production environment, which really increases the experience. Coming back to that, if you could quickly remind me around the maturity question.
Yeah, I'll comment on this before I do.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is like everything with AI, and look, this is the kind of the bread and butter we've been eating for the last couple of years, right? And we push AI features all the time. We
Yeah,
think about AI integrations. We think about how CDPs are effectively becoming like data foundation for all of the agents because they will need some sort of intelligence, and this is obviously the perfect kind of source for it in ideal world. And like everything with AI, it's we're at the stage where it's almost good, you know.
yeah,
And I think that's the case with something like this. Like I can totally see how someone would go around, build a process where I look at your website and I understand what's the customer journey there, and I kind of build out your events and attributes from it, and I kind of pump it into CDP. So you're kind of looking at what you look like. The
yeah.
problem with it being almost good is that that might work if you are vertically specialized. Like if you are
Mm,
doing just e-commerce, then this is probably going to be 95%, and there's going to be some oddballs like no, not everyone has transactions. Some people have subscriptions and slightly different business
yeah,
models, right? But like we are looking at, we're kind of debating this with a customer right now. It's a company that has, it's a group of companies, and we have a really clever way of sharing data across all five businesses that they have. So when you are in the CDP of the insurance company, they can leverage, for example, the car servicing intelligence. Like someone to selling or buying
yeah,
or servicing a car, right? Which is obviously the network benefit of a bigger holding company, and that's
yeah,
that's fantastic. But then when you look at transactions, well, you kind of see five different transactions in one CDP five times over, and that's not really easy to navigate for AI without a specific set of tailoring and
yeah.
instructions, right? So there's always these edge cases that kind of get me. I'm like, yes, it's almost good for 90% of it. The problem is the real value is in probably the last remaining
Oh, very
10%.
true. Yeah, no, it's I think AI is good for proving the point, and it's not actually good at how should I say, lamenting it, because there's a difference between AI being able to understand, hey, okay, there are five different transactions. They should all be related to one. But the complexity behind that is going to need human input. And eventually you'll be able to train the AI to understand how that complexity
Mm.
needs to be processed. But yeah, if you're looking at proof of concepts, and again, the point I was making about AI is purely for those proof of concepts, creating those demo websites, demo data models, etc., that are nearly matched. But there are some definitely some edge cases around that.
I'm curious about one trend, if you indulge me, and because your slide mentioned it a little bit as well. It's we've seen some proliferation of data warehouses as a CDP effectively.
Yes.
And this is always the data warehouse engineer owner type of narrative. And we've been saying for the longest time, it just doesn't have all the features. It's
Yeah.
it's a business application. It doesn't have the use cases built into it. It's effectively a better data model in the data warehouse, right? But obviously there are teams that if they get the ownership of this, and that's probably leads me to the bigger question there: who should be owning this? Because we still see this gap between
Yeah.
IT and between business. So who owns this? And is data warehouse kind of a build it yourself in a data warehouse type of thing dead end, and do, for example, the composable approach just solve that?
I'll be honest with you. I think in the last 7 years that I've actively been consulting around CDPs, there's been only one company on the first meeting that we had. There was a data engineer, there was a someone for data management, there was a front end engineer, there was a back end engineer. Everyone was there. they knew from day one that this is a multidisciplinary approach. There is no I own this. There's should be a we own this. And with that, I mean the realization that even if you have a data warehouse, there will be edge cases for real time. You need to solve for that. And as I don't care how loud you shout it about how great your solution is, you need to solve the solution for the customer. And what I'm seeing now with customer data warehouse, yes, it is powerful, but I'm seeing in most cases latencies. I'd be one enterprise company that I'm working with now has a 24-hour latency, pushing data into data warehouse, building audiences, syncing those out to a customer engagement platform and to advertising. That means that if somebody clicked on advertising and you want to do ad suppression, it's going to take maximum 24 hours before that person is suppressed. That's costing you money. So the case around real time, and we've seen this with a few vendors, composable vendors, actually coming back on their claim or coming out with a feature which they label just a little bit differently, saying, hey, we do have a kind of a real-time feature, even though we are a composable, we do have to deal with latency in the warehouse. It's a fact that composable is good. It does give you flexibility, but it also gives you complexity and additional challenges. So when you start looking at the organization about who owns it, again, it's a we. It's not an I. It's not a team. It's teams, because everyone is dependent on it. And if, as long as one of my first goals is to come in, because I usually, when you come in, I don't know if you've seen this before, you talk differently to marketeers when you do to engineers. And coming into an organization and kind of putting yourself into the middle, say, hey, I'm going to be that Babel fish. I'm going to translate what engineers actually really wants, really needs, is concerned about. And then you do the same for marketing and you bring these people closer together. And I think that's where the real opportunity lies.
That's actually very much our challenge, and we've been seeing it for since we've been doing this, right? It's because we realized that there's actually two completely separate sales processes. We have to onboard the business to get them understand that this is not a marketing automation challenge. This is not a customer engagement tooling challenge, because you kind of need the data. The higher level problem is that junior-ish marketers do not really understand the complexity of data. And I'm not talking about, ability to read a report and dashboard. Like, I'm actually talking about the inherently what data is and how does it behave and what does it treat. And then you have a completely separate conversation with IT and with data teams. And when you realize this, you have to have a tool that kind of fits both use cases. So we really talk about two distinct persona in the business. And sometimes the conversation starts with IT, sometimes it starts with business, but ultimately, always, both of them are in the room. And it's probably one of the most important things I would say. If companies are looking to buy a CDP, and there's this kind of the brave, innovative marketer who wants to do this and who sees the value in it because they just see how that fits in, they have to find a good partner in IT and in data, and then they're gonna do it well, right? Even if it's just one person, one kind of champion, it's not gonna work without it. It's the resistance is sometimes too big. So this is definitely tricky.
Yeah,
Curious about one more thing. The other kind of trend we've been observing for a while now, which kind of as vendors, as kind of the pure CDP vendors here, it makes us a bit grumpy, honestly. Is that there's a proliferation of everything adding CDP like features, and I kind of see this general trend in SaaS more in where everyone is about platformization. Everyone wants to kind of add peripheral features. So if you've been email tool, then sure, it makes sense to kind of enhance your onboarding data onboarding properties and quality. So it's kind of natural, very 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 natural to me, kind of motion. But do you see issues with that? Do you see gaps? Is two people calling one thing the same name, not being the same name? What's the story with this?
Absolutely. I think first of all, you're not going to get a bigger compliment if another tool is implementing features that you have built your foundation around. That's a compliment, because it's an acknowledgement that it's a feature that's working and a feature that's needed. And it's a feature that's lacking in their own system. So as soon as you see these companies, and I could probably name a few. There's like Customer IO started out as an ESP. Then I think they got into push notifications, and then now all of a sudden they are a CDP as well because they do collect those profiles. And that's just, I mean, there are a few more out there. I've even seen new CEPs jump onto the scene and say, "Hey, we are a CEP with a CDP built in."
Best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds, and I think this is kind of the convergence that we are seeing between CDP and CEPs. Is it necessary? I'll tell you one thing. I think it's necessary to the point if it meets your client's demands. As I previously mentioned, you have composable companies who swear by the composable data warehouse approach. Good for them. They bash real time. Good for them. I don't, of course, there are businesses that do not rely on real time. But once you start building a real time feature, that means, hey, that means there's client demand for something. And I think CDPs building out to kind of, doing email, doing in-app messaging, push notifications. Good. I mean, hey, if it helps your customer base, because in the end, I don't think that label is going to matter too much. It's about what you can deliver as a company. And then, but yeah, this trend is there, the commoditization of features. We saw it starting at the end of last year. There was a great article post by a CEO from a CDP who indicated this. So you have this, what he called the CDP 1.0. But the thing to look at is CDP 2.0. What's the distinction going to be between you and another CDP? Can it be something like Miro, for example, with your identity graph, really sets it apart from other companies because it's for many CDPs, it's not a core feature. But if you build that into your CDP as a core feature, it's going to make you stronger.
Yeah, I think look, from our perspective, from Miro's product strategy, I think it's always been a move towards value creation, because we realized that even though we are early on, before we added the channel capability, the CEP, light CEP, if you will, we've always realized that we are the ones triggering everything, and we are the ones responsible for the 3 times the amount of abandoned basket that suddenly your MailChimp or someone like that is sending, right? But we don't get the credit for it. So I think
Oh, don't get me started about that.
It's naturally been the move towards that, right? So I think that's always been the case. I've had a very firm opinion that hasn't changed much over the years, that it's much easier to add a floor to a building than to add a basement when the building has been already built, right? So I think that's kind of like that with the data foundation. Like, you can't really inherently change a data processing and data model when your definition of a customer in your architecture from the day one has been customer equals email address, and one on top of that,
exactly.
that becomes tricky. But nonetheless, there's a big market for it, right? And I think one other thing that's driving this massively also is that it's in SaaS space, it's increasingly more obvious that it's just difficult to get new logos. That doesn't matter how big you are. I've been spoken to product managers and sales leaders from very large companies recently, and they are all saying the same thing. It just doesn't matter if you have a very complex sales machine. New sales is harder. So everyone is obviously focusing on upsell, cross sell, and kind of expanding the offering, right? Which is a natural move, and that room is going to run out at some point as well. But it's working now. So obvious move.
I mean, we've seen it with AI being added, but at a certain point, that technology is going to plateau, and then you're going to need to figure out how are we going to improve the delivery of value.
Question I'm asking on kind of my behalf here, because that's a question we always get from customers, and I have to answer it literally every single new prospect client we are meeting, is what should they expect in terms of the team that needs to support CDP? Because like you said in your presentation, right, the cost of technology is one thing, and that's fairly hard to predict. You could argue about the composables that you don't really necessarily get to compute easily expressed, but that's still some extension of the kind of
Yeah.
hard parameters of the cost, right? But what the clients don't really necessarily have a clarity on, like who do they need? What does the team that runs CDP look like? Does there need to be a product owner? Is it a project manager? Is there technical staff? What do you say if generalization here is even possible?
Yeah, I don't think generalization is possible here. It really depends on the companies. There are companies, one client now who was working with a very difficult CRM setup, calling it a kind of CDP, who have now been introduced to what CDPs really can do. And it has sparked, seriously, it's really sparked a kind of a new level of creativity within these people to how they view the technology. And they're really starting to think, hey, how is this going to affect my work, but also how is this going to affect the efforts we need to take in the work that we do dealing with a CDP. There's another point. Are you very marketing focused or very engineering focused as a company? Again, and there's an argument for both sides. If you are very technical focused, look, the technical side of the CDP is going to be okay. But are you getting enough value out of it from a marketing? Like you just said, proving value from a CDP is always difficult if you don't have that activation part to it, because the marketers get all the love and appreciation if a marketing campaign goes well, but they don't see what's actually driving it. And that comes back to that CDP that might be run by the engineers. So if you have the marketers running the CDP, does that mean your engineering it's technically stable? Is the quality of the data that's going in good enough? So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no general solution here. External support, again, going to plug myself here. We bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience into these kind of systems. But again, as soon as you find someone within an organization that is eager to learn, latch yourself onto them and share your knowledge. It might shorten your contract, but you're going to get a happier customer. And you're going to get someone who's fully motivated to take this over internally, and try to find one on both ends, engineering and marketing. Yeah.
Mm. Um, I think this is a little bit too self-serving if I ask you that, right? But like, what's your thought on external expert services or external ownership and implementation outsourcing it? I think I think what I see is naturally the consultant, as in any other industry, CDP notwithstanding here, is a really good idea because you only know your architecture, you have limited experience. That's compound of the team that you have. That's a company that has a stable
Yeah.
team that hasn't changed much. So there's a very limited view, and you're thinking within the possible, which is usually stuff you already have, right? Like naturally bringing in consultants has kind of a potential downside edge in the fact that someone will be pushing technology that they sell. Impartial advice is
Yeah.
how impartial it ever is, right? Because again, you are same operating from perspective of your experiences and good and bad. So how should companies, and maybe when should companies consider bringing in consultants? Is it before? Is it when they made the decisions and they are going to implement? Where do you see the acceleration benefits the most?
When you feel stuck,
Hmm.
if you as a company are not getting anywhere, you're not getting any kind of alignment internally between teams about which way to go, get someone in with an objective point of view. Like you said, there are consultancies, agencies out there. Not, I mean, there are definitely exceptions to the case who will come in and try to push an agenda because of allegiances they have to certain vendors. But in the I think companies are becoming too smart these days to or smart enough to identify if you're pushing such an agenda. So
Sure.
objectivity is going to help you. And what it does is that you are able to inject yourself into the politics, because it's the politics that's usually slowing the progress down.
Mhm.
Nobody's willing to make a decision. Should we do A? Should we do B? What about option C? Nobody is. There's a lot of risk involved with making that decision, that people are scared to be blamed for that it affects their job performance or their performance reviews. So get external experts in. And I think that's a great solution. And I don't want to put myself on a pedestal here, but that objective view really helps you listen to everyone involved with this, and you'll get stories will start arise. You'll start to discover things that people are not discussing, engineers that are not discussing with marketers, or marketers saying, yeah, but that engineering guy, he's so stubborn, he has just this purest vision. But once you go in there and you start talking with the engineer, you listen to them, and you start accommodating to some of his requests, but also educating him, hey, but listen, there's another side to the story that you need to. And once those egos are out of the way, once the politics is kind of, the status quo is melted, that's really where the power of external consultants come in.
Mm.
But like I said, do not make this a permanent thing. Make sure you transfer your
Yeah.
knowledge internally, because they need to carry that forward.
And look, some companies do have a good point in outsourcing services, right? Because they need to grow faster. There's a
Yeah,
number of different tactical reasons to do that. But there's a one thing I've seen recently that I thought was really clever. So speaking to like a leadership larger company. CMO minus one responsible for this area, right? And he said that how they are going to run a CDP-ish project is that they are going to get a strategy partner, small agency consultancy,
yeah,
that is only going to have a remit of strategy, and they are going to get another one that's going to be doing all the executions because they don't want to be getting
yeah,
the strategic advice from the execution who has a motivation to only create more work for themselves, obviously. So we're kind of removing these negative incentives from their perspective, right? Which I thought is smart. But again, that creates you're suddenly managing a larger project more in the kind of in the realm of proper consultancy, having multiple parties to coordinate. So
yeah,
that's and there's one more thing I've kind of seen with clients over the years. I realize now as we're speaking, which is I see kind of two things. I see clients where we come in and they are focused on lean use cases as soon as possible, not even the full implementation, which is clever because you get to ROI fast, right? And ROI is another kind of another topic I want to touch a little bit here later. But and that's kind of the let's go fast, let's go straightforward approach I really like.
yeah.
And then and that kind of allows you to really incrementally grow and scale, right? Which is nothing wrong with that. It's very defensive. It's really safe from the perspective of being able to demonstrate value you're generating back. So quick value back. The other side is that I've seen customers who decide to build bigger teams, especially if it's a multi-brand context, a multi-market context, where they kind of have build a bigger team in HQ, which usually take much longer to ramp up. There's at least 6-9 months delay as teams are being built, the people are getting familiar, right? The execution is happening, the multi-market, multi-brand delays
Yeah.
everything as well. And what happens is when they hit the inflection point, it scales up much faster. It's just the warm-up time is much longer. So it's kind of two different approaches that I've seen. And I guess again, you have to be clever about which way you're gonna go, and you can't really have both, right? Because they are
No,
almost mutually exclusive.
no, absolutely. And I think the first example you gave is something that I've actually partaken in a large company that was working with two external agencies, both with their own responsibility. One was tasked with actually we were building a proprietary CDP. This is because of legal reasons. The data
Mhm.
was not allowed to leave the country. And then we had another team working with personalization. So there were two teams working on this project, but the company said, hey, listen, we don't know anything about this. We don't have the internal skills to understand what they are telling us, what they are selling us, or the improvements that they are trying to push on our plate and sign off on huge budgets. They said, we need someone, and they, pardon my French here, but they said, we need a bullshit filter. We need someone in the middle between the company and these agencies to act in the best interest of the company, to make sure that these agencies weren't taking the mickey out of them with budgets. So that's an interesting approach as well that I've seen. And coming back to the other one about starting a project and then waiting to scale up teams. This is something that I wrote about a few months ago, and it's based on some experience when I was in the military. Is that you have these training cycles. So workup cycles, they're called. So before you actually go on an active deployment, you go on a mission, so to say, you would actually go into these kind of these workup schedules. And these workup schedules were going into near realistic simulations, getting to know your team, reviewing, debriefing afterwards, making sure where to improve, and just keep on repeating to the point where you're a well-oiled machine able to handle the mission. And I kind of use that example as something that we need to do with CDPs as well. It might be good that your company's considering a CDP, and especially in 2026, but before you sign off, before you maybe even start negotiations, start training and do the workup training, workup schedules with your people. Make sure that they are versed on what is a CDP, what can it deliver, what are the technical implementations, how does this affect advertising, how do we deal with first-party and third-party data within or anonymous and known users within CDP. Once you do that workup, I'm confident that once once that client signs on with a vendor, the time to implementation is going to be drastically reduced. You need to not forget about your people. A tool is one thing, but if you're you can buy a car, but if you don't have a license, it's useless.
Yep, no, absolutely. That's a great way to describe that. Last two questions, as we're running out of time a little bit, but it's been really good. I'm getting exactly what I was hoping to get out of this, so it's fantastic. You referring back to your slides earlier, you talked about rise of a mid-market CDP and
Yeah,
especially going into 2026. What does that mean? How is a mid-market CDP different to everything we've seen in the last 7 years?
I don't think I don't think it's necessarily different in terms of the concept. What I'm seeing is, and I've actually got some confirmation of this, a lot of enterprise focused CDPs, CEPs mostly, they are saying, hey, our pricing does not fit country X, it doesn't match market Y. And what I remember from 10, 15 years ago with Google Analytics, I think it was like 10 years ago when they offered Google Analytics Premium. I think the base fee was $150,000 a year. A lot of companies want analytics. They wanted to do more with their analytics, but not a lot of companies can afford $150,000. It might be peanuts. It might just be a small percentage or even a tenth of a percentage for US companies or Canadian companies with a huge market and offering huge amount of opportunities for larger revenue. But when you come into Europe, when you come into these smaller countries with national focused markets, they do not have that kind of money. So what I mean around mid-market is that this opportunity where vendors, and I don't care who you are able to position and offer their services, their solution at prices that are more accommodating to the market, to what the companies are actually able to spend compared to their revenue. And and I think that's where a lot of opportunities lie, because there are a lot of companies who have matured in the last few years. They're starting to generate more revenue. These are the companies that might have started on a HubSpot or, like you said, a MailChimp, and they're stuck. They need to go somewhere. But if your starting price is around, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year or more, yeah, I mean, there are a few jumping into these, but like I said, the maturity of those products leave a lot to wish for.
I do see that totally. I think where is the price point is an interesting question, and I think there's a lot of kind of almost like a law of physics type of elements here that are going to be prohibiting that much, right? Because
Yeah,
you're processing large amount of data. It's not just the emails and the communications. It's typically the order or two of magnitude higher behavior data, especially if you venture into mobile apps. It's even richer in terms of data volumes than websites.
yeah,
And that is kind of the whole data processing, especially when vendors are kind of tied to a big hyperscaler cloud where just simply not cheap. Is the cost of infrastructure, I think,
yeah,
is
absolutely.
determining the margins for the software vendor. So this is not necessarily easy thing to crack. But I think we're kind of thinking about it in a few different ways. We've started offering, for example, like a agency reseller type of licenses where
Yeah,
a partner can come in, fraction one bigger license into a few smaller ones in terms of data volume, and they can implement few similar businesses that they already serve with, for example, emailing, which is common in
Yeah.
Europe as a service, and they want to add the CDP capability under that, which is it's kind of behaving as an interesting incubator because some of these companies mature out of it and they will ultimately want their own CDP. So I think as a business model, has got merit and is interesting. I do think also, I think this the CDP. I think the bigger challenge than budgets has honestly been a skill set and skilled personnel in the company. So people who would become the power user. And I think this is also one of the prerequisites, right? Like you can't sell the same product, just package it differently. You have to change what the user onboarding, what the user experience looks like. And you
Yeah.
said it yourself. The marketer often doesn't know what an SQL is. I mean, they know what an SQL is, but they don't know how to do it. And the fact that they can talk to an AI and AI is going to generate the code for them these days, it's not really helping it much because they still
No.
don't understand what's happening, right? So ultimately, it looks great in demos. It's in reality that's not you're effectively blind, right? And operating something on voice, it's not fantastic. So I think that this needs to also have an impact on how these products are structured. So I don't think it's just a matter of repackaging. I think it's a matter of a whole new, not category, but like a line of products that are more geared toward uh, toward this type of market, this type of budgets and users.
Absolutely.
But I also think that probably needs some more focused on niches, be it e-commerce or
Yeah.
be it something else, right? But yes, I think there's a opportunity to drive this a little bit further. Matthew, before your kind of closing thoughts, I've got one last question. So, given the season, what would be the one thing you want for Christmas this year from CDP vendors?
Oh, from CDP vendors. Some free sandbox accounts for me to better understand them. No, from CDPs. I think a little bit more human approach. We're drowning in AI, like you said. We're drowning in voice to solution. And what I want more from CDPs is kind of the empathy and the understanding that there are humans behind it trying to solve these issues. And with that, I mean acknowledgement, saying, "Hey, look, CDPs are difficult. We're here to help you. We're not here to sell you a product, but we're here to help you generate more value. And don't hide this behind a smoke screen of extra onboarding costs or professional services. Look, if your prices need to stay high, make sure you offer some more one-on-one support. Reach out once in a while and say, hey, how are you guys doing? Because we know this is difficult. We've seen you kind of reduce the number of logins, or maybe the systems become status quo. You all have this information. Just reach out to your customers a little bit, say more, how are you getting on? We're here to help. Just tell us what's on your mind. And I think once you acknowledge the human factor of the CDP, regardless of the tooling and the AI, that relationship is just going to be better. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's a great take. I think more human touch in or other areas would be improving things.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Matthew. Anything else to share? Any kind of closing thoughts on you want to leave people with?
No, just that the human part.
Mm.
I've been reading the books by Chiang Kai-Feng. I'm going to plug him here. Humanizing Data Strategy, a very good book. Same with Humanizing AI Strategy. It's if you want to put something on your on a Christmas wish list for your significant other to give you, put one of those books. It doesn't matter which one because they're both good. Have a read through it and then come back and look at your data, look at your tooling, and then you'll start to understand that this goes way beyond a SaaS solution. It's about relationships, it's about trust, and it's about feeling good at the end of the day, coming motivated into work, knowing what you can achieve with data.
Which is easy to ignore when you are dealing with technology. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you so much for today. This was fantastic. I'll make sure we plug these the links to these books into the newsletter when we share the recordings. And
Super.
this was perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you guys, everyone, survive the next couple of weeks until Christmas in peace. And we'll see you soon. See you in New Year with a new series and new guest. And thanks, Matthew, for joining us.
Thank you,
One last
Pavel.
thing: do subscribe to his newsletter. It's one of the best writings on a CDP space. So do, and obviously if you're in market for anything regarding strategy around CDP or this space, the Matthew is your guy to go to. So
Thank you, Pavel.
much recommended. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks everyone. Have a great
Happy
day, guys.
holidays. Bye.
Happy holidays.